growing up, I've always known that I am a German by heritage, and after taking 2 years of German class in my high school, which was actually the most fun class I've ever taken, I thought that it would only make sense that during this business international culture class that I were to do the country of Germany to learn some international culture and business aspects about it and be able to further my knowledge about Germany, a country which I thought I knew a lot about until I took this class and I've actually learned about twice as much as I thought I would. So I started off by looking at some German facts, just some facts about the country, some geographic facts, business facts, cultural facts, stuff like that. The main language is obviously German. However, there are some weird ones like Turkish, Kurdish, and Polish. There's a little bit of Italian speaking there. And those are the more main 4 or 5 main languages spoken in Germany. The types of people you'll see in Germany, the main type is obviously German people. However, you'll also see Swedish people from Sweden, and you'll see people from Austria, which are Austrian people, and Turkish, Polish, Italian. You're going to see those too, but Swedes, Austrians, Germans are the main 3 you'll see. But it is very diverse in Germany. There's a lot of people who come there. In the federal parliamentary government, they are a federal parliamentary government. They're a republic government, and they have 4 political institutions of those governments. So, they have 4 political institutions, just like we have the judicial branch and the presidential branch, and that they have 4 political institutions about that. The population in Germany is roughly 81 million people. It's somewhere around there. For the size of country that they are, they're not very big. They're about the size of Texas or Alaska, just in between there. So the fact that they have 81 million people stuffed in that much of a room, and we have obviously 50 times the size of that, is pretty actually interesting. There's 16 states in Germany, and of those states, 3 of them are city-states, meaning that there are 3 cities that are so large that they consider them city-states, is what they call them. And one of those city-states is actually the capital of Germany, which is Berlin. The political institutions, the 4 of them, is the Bundestag, which is the first house of parliament. I kind of related this to like the Senate or the House of Secretaries or something like this in America, something like that. I mean, there really isn't something that matched perfectly when I looked at the political institutions for America and the political institutions for Germany. Then I found the Bundesrat, or however they pronounce it, and that's the second House of Parliament, which is kind of why I related it to the House of Representatives, because there's 2 representatives per country, so per state in America. That's why I kind of looked at it that way. But again, there's no really exact way to tell, between the Bundestag and the Bundesrat, exactly compare them to America. Finally, there's the Bundesratsung or the Bundesratsung or something like that. And that's the Federal Administration Building, which is home of some federal administration people. But the big person that is there is the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and she's there. I don't know. I don't remember how many years her term is, but she's been there for like 12 years, I believe. So Angela Merkel, very popular person there. She's the German Chancellor, and she works in the Bundesregierung, and the Chancellor is kind of like a vice president over there. I mean, the Chancellor does a lot of political stuff. It's not the president, but... And then finally there's the President, something like that. And that's the building home, and that's the building which is home of the German president. Communication culture in Germany. They have an interesting communication way. And the funny thing is, I took 2 years of German, and in those 2 years of German, the main thing we learned about some German culture, just a little bit, but the main thing we learned about is about the German language. And so I found it very interesting to find out these are the 4 main things that kind of stuck out at me, considering I've learned the German language fairly well, and yet these 4 communication things that I never learned in German class. So it starts off with they're very verbal. They're a very verbal culture. That's just the way they are. They love to speak. They're very verbal with their communication ways. They're not very nonverbal. I mean, nonverbal. They don't do much nonverbal stuff. I learned this one as of recently. I had actually known it before the culture preferences quiz, but this one just helped. But that just helped me to think that it's true. Is the verbal commitments or oral commitments are binding in Germany? I mean, they may say, well, you didn't sign a contract. Well, in America, you say, well, you didn't shake your hand or you didn't sign a contract. There, they say it's a verbal commitment, and so that's what's going to happen. You said it. You said you'd bet me $20. The soccer team lost, so you now owe me $20. We didn't shake on it. Who cares? Then I found out that German is the most common language. That's the one thing I did know. But the cool thing is there's two types of German, and they call it Standard German, which is what I learned. It's also called High German. To like the local people, they call it High German. But it's known as the West Germanic language. And the West Germanic language is obviously spoken in the West, kind of Northwest and West. And it's known as High German, which is what when you hear people in America speak German, they're most likely speaking High German. Then there's East German, which is North Germanic language, and that's spoken in East Germany. That's also called Low German, and that one's not as common, and it's a very different type of German. Like when you watch all the movies and like, yeah, Hitler and the stuff like that. I think that's more the Low German. I know the High German stuff like that. And Germans have an extra finesse to how they speak. Like, my German teacher had been to Germany a lot of times, and she brought in a couple students who had also gone with her on this trip. And they said they would speak the German way that they had been taught in class, and even our German teacher would speak to them that German way. And they'd look at us and say, "Are you American?" Because they immediately knew that we were American people. And you'd be like, "Well, how do they know that?" Well, it's because that extra finesse that German people talk with, American people don't know. I mean, it's like people in America who say swag or yo or what's up. I mean, in Germany, they'd have no idea what that means. If they came over here, they knew American, they'd be like, what is swag? But over there, they have that extra finesse that we don't understand. Finally, I looked up some gender roles in Germany. And in the job world, men are more respected, even though women are given higher rights. It took a while for Germany to get diversely caught up in the gender world. So Germany they weren't really like diverse in the gender world. So that's why the higher rights are up there for women, because it took them a while for women to finally get jobs and get the right to vote and stuff like that. Men are way more respected. They always have been. And I think that's the problem in Germany, is even though the women are now getting all the jobs and stuff, they're not catching on to that. Like the next point here, women get higher pay. I mean, it's that simple. As of 2014, men got 86.5 and women got 92.0. And I'm not sure what kind of scale that's on in the thousands or whatever. But I just find that interesting that even though the women have higher rights because people because they don't really respect them in the job world, like even though women get paid higher, they still consider that men are known as the superior income supporter. So even though a married couple in the average German ways, the women would make more, the men would still be known as the guy who brings in the money, the supporter of the family. And in self-employed situations, and there's not too many in Germany, but actually there's a lot. There's a lot of self-employments in Germany. You can see here, as of 2014, men were more self-employed by 13.5 to 8.0 in Germany. Finally, I found some cultural facts about Germany. Cultural art facts. Art and theater are very popular. I looked it up, and there are over 130 different theaters throughout the country of Germany that have weekly or monthly shows. I mean, there's tons of theaters in the United States, but they take months to prepare. These ones have either a monthly one or a weekly one. And I'm trying to think. There's a celebration they have that is this play, the Passion Play, in Unterammergau is the name of the Passion Play, and it happens in the city of Unterammergau, and that happens once every year. But it's this big play about the reuniting of Germany, which is brings me to my next point: Germany unity. Germany divided into East and West at the beginning of World War I or II, one of them, I'm not sure. They reunited on October 3rd, 1990, and that is now called German Unification Day. And so to think about it, that's only 25 years ago that they reunited. So that's why this is kind of a big thing in the German culture. Finding the German society. It took Germany, like I've said, a long time. They had an old-fashioned men over women for a long time. A very long time. It was always, oh, I'm a man. I bring in the house. I do everything. Make me dinner, stuff like that. And that's how it was for a long time in Germany. And after the reuniting, it really changed. It was starting to head that way in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. 60s is when it kind of began. But when the reuniting happened, they kind of got together and said, hey, we're treating our women like crap. Like, I'm not surprised that they haven't gone to Sweden or Austria or places that respect their women way more. Why don't they walk right over the border? I don't know. And so I found it really interesting that they changed after that reunited. That was when the big change happens, that they said, you know what? We're going to respect our women. We're going to give them higher rights in the job force, and we're going to give them pay. And so they actually kind of started kind of even. Back in 2000, the stats show that men and women were even in pay. And finally, I've told you earlier in the PowerPoint how there's so many coexistence. I mean, go back in the PowerPoint here. You see how there's German, not only Germans, but there's Turkish and Polish and Italian and Swedish and Austrian. And while that's the main majority of them, there's still a lot of other kinds. That's just the ones who are in big enough bulk to talk about them. There's still other smaller ones. And so coexistence with immigrants is a big thing in the society, because if you remember during World War II, there was a group called the Jews who were not very well respected. They were a new group coming in at that time, and Hitler and the Nazis didn't like them, and so immediately they just tried to wipe them out. And so Germany's had problems with coexisting with immigrants and being very diverse. And so today, with that many kinds, the Swedish, the Austrian, the Turkish, and all that, it's kind of a big deal that they coexist with them, even though you may think, oh, well, we get along with Mexicans and the Arabs and all that come into our state, our country. Well, we are way more diverse than they are. Even though Germany's been around longer than America has, we are 10 times more diverse than they are. And so the German society is beginning to coexist with immigrants to a full extent now, and they're finally getting to that period. And so after looking this all up, I was finally able to realize that the German culture is just completely different to ours, even with the political system. And when it came down to it, I tried to relate everything I didn't understand that was German to American. Like the Bundesrat and the Bundestag and all that in the political institutions. I tried to relate them back to American so I could have any idea, what kind of thing is this? And in the end, it was extremely difficult to do. And so that's why I figured that Germany is one unique culture.